Yesterday, Nvidia launched the 4060 Ti 16GB version, and I was waiting for that to do this month's buying guide so that when we get to the $500 price point, I can tell you why you should not buy this. The other big change for this month is that AMD has launched their Starfield bundle. So basically all of the, I'll show you the eligible products here, but if you're looking on the GPU side of things, basically all of the 6000 series starting at least with the 6600 and up. So not the 6400 or 6500 XT, which I don't recommend anyway. And then all of the 7000 series GPUs will offer the Starfield bundle, and if you're buying the 6700 or higher, it will be the premium edition of the game, which I think is a $100 premium edition, and then the standard edition is what, $60 or $70, and this is a highly anticipated game that a lot of people will want. So when we're, in other words, I usually don't factor game bundles into the value of a GPU. But if it is a game that you will buy regardless, then the value of the game bundle actually should be factored into your buying decision, because then it actually is saving you money. So if you were planning on already buying Starfield, then the AMD GPUs in today's recommendations do have a little bit more going for them in the value proposition, and that is something that we will consider here. However, if we look at the newest GPUs, the cheapest new GPU launched from AMD has been the 7600, which has dropped in price a bit down to $258. The newest GPU from Nvidia is the 4060 at $300. However, their previous generation products have taken some price falls, so we should actually start our discussion with the 6600 from AMD. Which is in price down to $180 on the cheapest models. And again, it is eligible if you buy from a compatible retailer for the Starfield bundle. So if you were already going to buy Starfield, and maybe you're actually looking to upgrade, to support a new AAA game like that, I don't think the RX 6600 is going to max out every game, probably not even Starfield at 60 FPS 1080p, but it will be able to find some reasonable settings to do so in the vast majority of new titles, and I don't think there's really a competitor at this price point. A couple of days ago, Intel's Arc A750 was available with a coupon code down to this price, but it has since gone up again. So if you're going to buy a GPU under $200 for that's a new GPU, it should be the RX 6600 from AMD. I don't recommend going below this power level or price point if you're buying new. You could consider the used market. My video is going to focus on the new market, but if you're buying used, today's sponsor, Jawa.gg, is definitely somewhere you should check, but not only if you're buying used, and they do offer some new products as well, but this is how you should fund your hardware upgrade. You should sell your GPU that you have currently in order to fund the upgrade. Now, Jawa offers two options for this. You can list the card for sale yourself, where you manage the listing and pick your price. But, Jawa offers an interesting alternative for people. I've talked to some of my friends who don't sell their used GPUs because they don't want to deal with the hassle. I say, you know what, it is pretty safe and there are good seller protections, all of that. However, if you want a hassle-free alternative where you're not dealing with a third-party buyer, Jawa has you covered. They give you the option to sell directly to Jawa with a hassle-free alternative. You tell them your GPU model and condition. They offer you a price immediately. You ship your GPU to Jawa. They receive it, inspect it, and pay you in 1 business day. You just click this link to get you an offer. And my link in the video description and pinned comment will take you directly to this page where, again, you can shop used GPUs, but you can click get an offer. If you want to remove the hassle and sell directly to Jawa, again, you can create your own listing and manage it for sale yourself as well. However, if we're going back into the new market, then I think we should take a look at the next step up in price. Now, this is where Intel enters the discussion, at least. Their previous generation 30 series lowest tier card was the 3050, and it has dropped in price to $220, which is much lower than it was before we had the RTX 4060 putting pricing pressure on it. However, I still don't think you should buy it. There's a couple of alternatives. Here's where Intel enters the picture with their Arc A750. The Arc A750 is $220 right now. However, like I said, I did see it drop as low as $180 a couple of days ago, so you could keep your eye out for that. Although there are some reasons why you may not want to go with Intel, which we'll get to in just a second. But then what does AMD have in this price point? I have seen the 6650 XT hit $220, although today, as of the day of filming, it is sitting at $240, so that is an extra $20. So in this kind of $220, I guess up to $240 price point, those are your competitors. I haven't tested the 6650 XT up against these two Intel and Nvidia options. However, the 6600 XT performs very similarly. The 6650 XT just has slightly faster memory and would be even doing slightly better than I'm showing you in these side-by-sides here. And again, it's going to come with the Starfield bundle, which I think, again, for many people, but not everybody, will add some value to the purchase. So here, I'm still going to say I think AMD makes the most sense. But let's actually talk a little bit about the three GPU brands and their pros and cons and things to consider. We should probably explain, okay, so why does Nvidia charge more for the same performance? Or you could look at it as give you less performance for the same price. Does that make sense? Nvidia does have by far the largest market share, so it seems like a lot of people are willing to pay more for Nvidia. And my take is that it can depend on your particular use case and the price point and performance class that you're buying into for whether it makes sense to spend the extra money on the NVIDIA GPU. For one thing, in productivity workloads, NVIDIA's CUDA acceleration has support in some hardware, in some software, some productivity use cases that AMD and Intel just don't have that same level of support for. However, if you're buying a GPU for gaming, which is what I'm focusing on here, that's not going to really matter to you. Also, in terms of gaming performance, one of the biggest differences between the brands is their upscaler. So if you want to boost your performance in a game by lowering the resolution the game is rendering at, and then using a upscaling technique to try to output an image that looks like the native resolution of your monitor, you have DLSS versus XeSS versus FSR. DLSS is the best looking of the bunch, and they all offer similar performance benefits. FSR2 did a good job of getting close to DLSS, but it really isn't still there from an image quality perspective, and I would point you to a different video to look at detailed image quality analysis. DLSS does look better, especially at lower resolutions or at more aggressive settings. At higher resolutions like 4K, which you're not going to be, a lot of people just aren't going to be playing at that resolution or buying GPUs that expensive, FSR does do a better job of competing, especially at like the quality settings. Also, NVIDIA now offers frame generation, but only on their latest 40 series of GPUs. So I'll talk about that a little bit more once we get there. Also, some of the Intel GPUs do offer AV1 encoding, which the 30 series and 60 series from AMD and NVIDIA respectively don't, although the 7000 series from AMD and the 40 series from NVIDIA offer AV1 encoding, which helps you stream to YouTube, which is, I think, currently the only streaming platform supporting it, with a better looking stream at a lower bitrate. Can also have some productivity use cases. But for straight up gaming, the main differences are upscaling and ray tracing. AMD has the weakest ray tracing acceleration. However, this is where I think, again, your personal preferences as well as the price point you're buying at matters, because at the price point we're talking about currently, this little bit over $200 GPU range, I don't think the ray tracing performance is at a level where you would really want to turn it on any of these GPUs. I think it makes more sense to turn down settings to boost your frame rates rather than turn on ray tracing to lower your frame rates further to get that little extra visual fidelity. Also, if AMD has a performance lead, then enabling ray tracing might reduce its performance lead or even bring it down to a tie, but it will often still have a performance lead if it just offered more performance at the same price as a baseline. But in the heaviest ray tracing workloads, NVIDIA will often pull ahead. But again, the question is, are you at a performance tier where enabling that heavy of a ray tracing workload actually makes sense? Anyway, those are the main differences between the major brands, other than Intel has a bit of a problem, which is software support. So the Arc A750, I'm not going to recommend here, mainly because if you play older games. Many older games, Intel is a newer a new challenger in the discrete GPU segment. And so their driver support for older games is very hit and miss. Many of them don't work well. Many of them have issues. The newer games tend to at least run, but the performance can be kind of up and down, hit or miss. It can compete really well in some games, but not in others, so it's much less consistent. Again, those are the main differences between the brands. Let's take a look at this $200 to $300 price point though, because once you start hitting like the 6650 XT here, I said is pushing up into $240, it starts getting really muddy which GPU makes the most sense here. I'm just gonna say that I think the next GPU that makes a lot of sense is the 6700 XT from AMD, but currently that is up to $330, although it frequently dips down to $210, $220, and I even on Prime Day did see it go down to $299. So the 6700 XT, why is this the next GPU that I think is exciting to talk about? Well, for one thing, it's 12 gigabytes instead of the 8 gigabyte cards, which means that in a lot of games, you will be able to use the maximum settings, including the highest level of textures, without spilling over your VRAM capacity and impacting your performance. Also, again, it is eligible for the Starfield Premium Edition bundle. So if you're interested in Starfield, that does add a bit of value to the situation. And then, what is it competing against? Well, from Nvidia, you have the 4060, which is at $299.99. So we got $300 versus $330. So the Nvidia GPU here is a bit cheaper. It also isn't as fast, and it has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, so you do have to be more mindful of the settings you're using in games being appropriate to the level of VRAM that you have. And so with all of that said, I think especially if you're trying to go for 1440p, I think having that extra VRAM is certainly going to pay off on the 6700 XT, the extra performance. So that's definitely where I'm coming down. However, in the $200 to $300 range, there's certainly a lot of other options. Like there's 3060 12 gigabyte cards around $280, although they don't have the greatest coolers. Some of them are pushing closer to $290, where it's like, okay, I get that the 3060 has more VRAM than the 4060, but the 4060 is a little bit faster and does have the newer features like AV1 encoding and frame generation, so I don't think I can recommend that. There's also AMD's 7600, which is their newest GPU, and it is coming in at $258. So I do think the 7600 can make sense if you want to spend a little bit more than the 6650 XT for just a little bit more performance and an AV1 encoder. The 7600 I think can make sense. But like I said, I really think the most exciting GPUs from a value perspective are really the 6600 at $180, and then jumping up to the 6700 XT at $330 because that gets you the 12 gigabytes, a lot more performance, it's a lot more 1440p capable, and all of that. So those are really my standouts. And then, I've looked at this against the 16 gigabyte A770 doesn't compete well here from Intel. And then, like I said, the NVIDIA GPUs, if you really want their features, just realize you are definitely getting less raw performance for the money. And we're at a performance tier here. Well, I guess you could consider ray tracing. A lot of people would still prefer to keep it off for the extra performance boost. Again, there are reasons to at least consider the NVIDIA alternatives, but the 6700 XT is getting my recommendation, especially if you are going to buy Starfield. Getting that in the bundle does make a lot of sense as well. Now, at this point, we enter just a dead zone in GPU value. So from here, you could spend a little bit more to get a 6750 XT. It gets you a little bit more performance, jumps up the price a little bit. Then we get up to the 4060 Ti at $381, it looks like. So it has come down a bit from its $400 MSRP. And the 4060 Ti is still an 8GB card, and it just feels really bad to spend almost $400 on an 8GB GPU in 2023. Again, when the 6700 XT can get you 12GB for less. You can look at the raw performance between these. The 4060 Ti is more expensive, but again, it does have the newer features like AV1 encoding. It does have the it does have frame generation. Again, DLSS does look a little bit better, but again, 8GB, $380 doesn't feel really great. So this is where I'm just saying we're kind of entering a bit of a dead zone. And then you could look at the 16GB version that Nvidia just launched for the 4060 Ti and then immediately discard the idea of buying it. First of all, it costs the cheapest models are listed at $500. Some models go more than that, and I haven't actually seen any of them come into stock yet. So technically these are now, available. They're allowed to be sold, but I don't think they've actually been supplied to retailers yet. They are officially available, though. This was weird. It was buried in an email from Nvidia about other stuff. It's like they kind of wanted to hide that this even launched. Where there's this long email talking about like Portal RTX, some kind of expansion mod to that, with some new features. And then buried in that, they also talk about a new driver update, which enables the 4060 Ti 16GB version, which they say is now allowed to be produced and sold. And that it will basically get the identical performance to the 8GB version unless you're using ultra settings that spill over the 8GB of VRAM, in which case the 4060 Ti won't take the performance hit that the 8GB version does. And for $500 or more, compared to $380 on the 8GB version, I think we see why Nvidia did not ship out review samples and is burying the launch announcement in the bottom of an email about other stuff. The 16GB version does not seem to make any sense from a gaming perspective. I'm trying to think about any reason why someone might buy this. Perhaps there is a productivity workload someone needs where you have to have Nvidia and you have to have 16GB of VRAM, but your budget only goes to $500. So that seems like the one niche case where this could make sense to somebody, I guess. Other than that, I'm hoping that the market conditions just push its price down. And because really, I think the 4060 Ti would have been more exciting if that 16GB version was the launch version. And then, if that came down to $380, then I think it might be a more exciting or at least reasonable product. Anyway, past this point, so if you've got the 6800 from AMD, looks like that's available right now at $450, and the XT version is available for $510. So again, if you were going to buy a $500 GPU, this is again why the 16GB 4060 Ti doesn't make any sense. I don't have the 16GB 4060 Ti to give you a direct head-to-head comparison right now, but the 6800 XT will be a lot faster than the 4060 Ti 16GB in gaming workloads for the same price. So we're about $500 here. And again, the 6800 non-XT also gets you 16GB of VRAM for $450 right now. So between these, I think that price to performance scaling is fairly even. So if, I think at $450, the 6800 is the best new GPU at this price point. And at $500, the 6800 XT is the best GPU at this price point. And like I said, Nvidia is really not offering a lot to compete here. You've got the 4060 Ti 8GB version, which is a little bit overpriced and under VRAM supplied, and then the 16GB version, which is underperforming at $500. So there you go. Now, the next Nvidia option is the 4070. The 4070 is coming in at $600, and it finally jumps up from 8GB of VRAM to now 12GB of VRAM. Now, the thing is, the 4070 offers you, when you're not using ray tracing, about the same performance as the 6800 XT. And the 6800 XT costs $100 less, also has a bit more VRAM. Now, 12GB of VRAM in current games has not been causing issues for me in my testing. However, You know, if you're going to hang on to the GPU for several years, we certainly are having games bumping right up against 12 gigabytes at 1440p right now. So we certainly could see that be something to think about. But I don't think it's going to be a huge deal, at least, in the immediate future. But again, 4070 is $100 more than 6800 XT for similar rasterized performance. However, the 4070 does have stronger ray tracing performance and does offer newer features like frame generation. It's more energy efficient. It has a better upscaler. It has AV1 encoding. However, the AMD GPU does come with the Starfield bundle, which is also increasing its value. Also, you could go up to the 6950 XT from AMD, which comes in at $580 right now on the cheapest available model. So basically the same price as the 4070. It also gets you the Starfield bundle. So again, if you care about Starfield, factor that in. But if you don't care about Starfield, make sure you're not, getting misled or something like that, right? So that matters to some people, but not everybody. But the 6950 XT does generally perform a bit faster than the 4070 when you're not using ray tracing. In light ray tracing workloads, it might even come out even. But in heavy-duty ray tracing workloads, the 4070 can have an advantage. And then again, it does have a feature advantage. The 6950 XT draws a lot of power, so your power supply may not support it, depending on the rest of your system and what your power supply is. It's also often a very large cooler model, although some of them aren't super huge. So keep in mind the size of the cooler. Make sure it fits in your case. The 4070 draws a lot less power, might be a bit smaller, that kind of a thing. So I think there's reasons to buy either one. The 4070 is getting to the performance tier where ray tracing might actually be something that you would want to use. In which case you'd probably also use upscaling, where DLSS does look a bit better. And in single player games, frame generation might make sense. Frame generation is a situational feature. It isn't available in every game. It also does not increase the responsiveness of the game. It increases its motion smoothness, which can be nice to have. But if your base frame rate's not high enough, for me personally, I like a base frame rate of around 60 FPS. This does a good job then of interpolating the frames without a lot of image quality artifacts, and does boost the smoothness of the image on a high refresh rate display. It's not a good technique for going from like 40 FPS to 60 FPS, in my opinion, because the latency and image quality does take a bit of a hit at those lower frame rates. And again, it's not a feature that's exciting for competitive use because it doesn't actually boost the responsiveness of the game. It's adding an interpolated frame in between two real frames and slightly delaying, showing you the latest real frame in order to do that. But again, I think some people will be drawn to the features and the energy efficiency on the 4070, and some people will be drawn to the raw performance on the 6950 XT. So I'm going to give a split recommendation here at the $600 price point. Now, the next price point up is dictated by the 4070 Ti, which is coming in around $800. There's some models down around $790, but for the most part, it's an $800 product. An AMD alternative is the 7900 XT without the extra X. It looks like currently those are around $750, although I have seen them come in as low as about $705 recently. When it's a significant discount, I think the 7900 XT would probably get my recommendation. If this was $700 versus $800, that's pretty exciting. At $750 versus $800, once again, I think this is going to come down to what you care about more. Features versus raw performance. The 4070 Ti is, again, strong enough where ray tracing might be something that you'd want to use, as well as then using, DLSS quality at 1440p and then kicking on frame generation if it's supported. This is an interesting way to play a lot of games on the 4070 Ti. That being said, $800 for a 12 gigabyte GPU does feel really bad, and the 7900 XT is offering you 20 gigabytes of VRAM at a lower price point, and you are getting the Starfield bundle thrown into the mix. The 7900 XT, again, is also giving you a bit more raw performance for a bit less money, and that is certainly something to think about. I think your resolution you're playing at here might matter as well, because, well, 12 gigabytes of VRAM isn't giving us a lot of issues at 1440p right now. You can find more issues at 4K, and I think that 4K resolution, there will be more issues going forward. And I also think the ray tracing performance of the 4070 Ti is a bit underwhelming at 4K resolution. So with all of that being said, I think the extra VRAM and raw performance on the 7900 XT makes it my 4K resolution recommendation at this price point. Whereas at 1440p or 1080p, I'll give a bit more of a split recommendation for whether you're more drawn to ray tracing and other features versus the 7900 XT's bit more raw performance without ray tracing enabled and the extra VRAM capacity. I think there can be arguments made on either of those cases. Now, the next GPU up is the 7900 XTX, which is a bit over $900 right now. I have seen its price come down well below that at times. However, we're not currently in that situation, although again, the Starfield bundle could add value for some people if you would already be planning on buying Starfield. At the $900-ish price point, the 7900 XTX is my recommended GPU because there is no direct competitor. And from Nvidia, the next GPU up is the RTX 4080, which at current prices I'm seeing right now is a little over $1,100. And I think that a $200 price gap between the 4080 and the 7900 XTX means they are not really direct competitors. I think the 7900 XTX is the best GPU around $900, and the 4080 is the best GPU around $1,100. Although I think both of those GPUs could stand to reduce their prices and do not get an enthusiastic recommendation from me. They just get they win by default in their price category because there's nothing else to buy in that price category. They get that recommendation. So if you have the budget, you can buy those GPUs at those price points. It's not very exciting to buy them at those price points. Past this point is the RTX 4090, which is still hanging out around $1,600. And is it worth it? Well, if you're playing at 4K resolution especially, the extra performance on the 4090 is certainly helpful. Is it worth it? Well, I think to buy a card like this, you just have to have a lot of disposable income where you're just okay with spending $1,600 on a GPU and that's not affecting you in a negative way financially. The money's there. You want to play at the highest graphic settings in every game and you just want the best. You can buy a 4090. The vast majority of people will not be, but it is certainly noticeably better than the 4080. And it is also noticeably better than the 7900 XTX. So you are certainly getting something for the money. It is just extremely expensive. All right, that's it. At this point, there are rumors pointing towards AMD expanding with a 7800 series and 7700 series, maybe out in like September, but there's no rumors of that coming out anytime really soon. And I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm going to be surprised if those do much better than the 6800 XT at its current price point. So again, that's just speculation, but if you're waiting for those, I'm not sure you really should. You could wait in general on the GPU market, see if things come down, or for the next generation or something like that. But again, there's not a lot announced in the near future from any of the companies, so this is kind of where the market's sitting right now. I will continue to do this every month as pricing changes, and once again, you could definitely consider the used market at Jawa.gg if the new prices are just not looking that exciting to you. Also, selling your GPU to fund your upgrade will help offset a lot of the cost. And not just GPU, you can sell any of your PC hardware on here. You can buy any PC hardware on here. So again, thank you to today's sponsor, Jawa.gg, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.